All right, so we wanted to bring you an update on this protest that happened in Los Angeles. So the protest, which no one in media will apparently tell you, was in the context of a real estate event at a synagogue where they were selling off stolen land in the West Bank, exclusively available, by the way, to Jewish people. Now, in America, restrictive covenants are illegal. You can't say this neighborhood is for whites only anymore, but in Israel you can say this neighborhood is for Jews only. And so there's been a series of these real estate events. There was one in Teaneck, New Jersey. There have been some in Canada. This was the latest happening in LA. And so protesters showed up to protest this event. Counter-protesters also showed up, and the whole thing, as the cops are just standing by and letting it happen, devolves into chaos and violence. We'll give you a little bit of a taste of that. You know, you've got, I don't know who's instigating, et cetera. I can tell you there were journalists who had their, one journalist who had his phone stolen by a pro-Israel protester. I also want to mention that there were protests outside of that Teaneck, New Jersey synagogue real estate event as well. And those remained peaceful because the cops kept the two sides separated. So there have been, this isn't even the first time that protests have erupted at this thing. Okay, so that is what it looked like. Let me show you the poster of the real estate event that was, you know, for what was occurring at this synagogue. They say, come and meet representatives of housing projects in all the best Anglo neighborhoods in Israel. And again, this group, the My Home in Israel real estate company, they offer properties that are for sale in the occupied West Bank. And, you know, this is illegal by international law, probably illegal in US law too, certainly against US policy, et cetera. The way this was covered in the press was so incredibly dishonest. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, actually, it's totally believable in par for the course, honestly, of the way that they,
I'll tell you, Krystal,
the way that they approach it.
Because so I check in, I log in. I was like, okay, wow. It was like some crazy stuff went down in Los Angeles. And so I look into it and I'm like, by the way, as people know, I would say I'm pretty neutral on this. I'm open to it. Bunch of Palestine, Kefia, Maskies, you know, beating people up. It's possible. I'm skeptical. So we look into it. And we're like, oh, yeah, it doesn't seem good. Now, all these politicians start condemning the act. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is terrible. There was a pogrom that happened in Los Angeles. Now I'm starting to get suspicious because anytime I start to see that language come out, I'm like,
wait
okay.
a second.
So then, you know, our producer is like, well, you know, it was in response to a real estate event. And I said, what? What are you talking about? So then we start to look and we checked it. We had to check that flyer. We confirmed it. We go to the Los Angeles Times and we read, you know, the local paper about what happened. And you have to read, I want to say 20 paragraphs down.
We have this already. We can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, we can put D3, please, guys, up on the screen. And it takes scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to discover the context of the real estate event. And in my opinion, that kind of does change everything though, because all the rhetoric that I see online is everyone's like, why are they protesting in a synagogue? This is disgusting, this is a religious temple, like how can they do this out of all the places to choose? I'm like, okay, well, if you're hosting a real estate event, auctioning off land in the West Bank, and it says Anglo neighborhoods early, that's a little bit crazy. Can we all agree with that? All right. Now, I'm not saying anybody gets deserved violence. You know, I don't think there should be any violence. Yeah, again, agreed. On the other side.
Agreed.
But, you know, legitimate, I think, around for a protest. So, I mean, this is what I mean. Let's flip it around. So, I'm Indian. Let's say that there is a Hindu temple, like the one I used to go to where I was growing up. And there was an event there where they were auctioning off land in Kashmir. That'd be a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And we said it was only for Hindus. And then a bunch of Pakistanis showed up and then there was like a clash or whatever. And people said that they had unprovoked attacked a bunch of Hindus. Even me, I'd be like, come on guys. Like this, look, they're within their rights, you know, to show up. This is America. Last time I checked, none of that is in the public sphere. The way people are talking about it, it's as if it was totally unprovoked. And I just think, look, again, I condemn violence. I don't think it should have happened. I think the police should have kept them separate, etc. That said, if you don't report that, you are just being blatantly dishonest.
So because
and that's the issue.
Here's the way. To be honest with you, the LA Times, the fact they even mentioned that there was a quote unquote real estate event with none of the like, oh, and by the way, they're selling, you know, illegal stolen land, et cetera, and it's for Jews only. The fact they even mentioned that puts them better than like 95% of mainstream coverage, which all portrayed this as like, people just hate Jews, so they were protesting a synagogue, with none of the context. Now listen, I think it's fair if people want to say, listen, I don't care what they were doing in a synagogue. I think that a house of worship should be off limits, period. You shouldn't protest. I don't agree, but I think that's a reasonable position you could take. Okay. If you want to say, you know, certainly you can say there shouldn't be violence. Okay, that's fine. I don't agree with the nature of the protest. I think also you could say, from a tactical perspective, was it wise to go and protest this and knowing the way the media may portray it, et cetera? I think that's a legitimate, you know, point of view to make that argument as well. But to pretend people just showed up because they hate Jews and they wanted to protest a synagogue is so incredibly dishonest.
Yeah.
And this turns into, of course, a whole thing. Joe Biden puts out a statement condemning the anti-Semitism. Gavin Newsom, the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, none of them acknowledging that, by the way, also, you know, selling occupied land in the West Bank, that is supposed to be counter to US policy as well. So in theory, they should be on the same ideological side of the protesters. And then there's also just the double standard of every time a Palestinian protester, pro-Palestine protester does anything that the media can spin and lie about and colorably make appear like it's all about anti-Semitism, the president's got to put out a frickin' statement. Well, there was an incident, you know, alleged in Texas where some unhinged woman asked a mom who's Palestinian American where she was from and then tried to drown her kids when she learned that they were Palestinian American. Where's the statement on that? Where's the statement on the you know, Bezalel Smotrich, Israeli minister? A speech just came out where he said, hey, we're going to annex the whole West Bank. Or, you know, the video we showed you yesterday where they tied an injured Palestinian to the hood of an IDF vehicle and are using him as a literal human shield. Like, where's the outrage and the statements over that? But so this drove me absolutely insane. Just to give you a little bit more background, here's D4. We can put this up on the screen. As I mentioned before, this wasn't the first of these events. This has been a series of events across our country and also in Canada. This one is focused on the Teaneck, New Jersey event. They describe it as the disastrous Great Israeli Real Estate Event. And most of the events, they say, was a company called My Home in Israel, which also was involved in this one in LA, brought along to showcase available properties in both Israel and the Palestinian territories it occupies. Multiple units in a building in East Jerusalem, townhouses in the heart of the West Bank, and a 5-bedroom villa with a pool in the luxury enclave of Efrat, south of Bethlehem. From the first stop, they say, in Montreal, protesters have shown up to condemn the sale of houses built on settlements illegally expropriated from Palestinians in the West Bank. And in Teaneck, I believe we actually covered here, there was a Jewish man who showed up at a community meeting and said, you know, this is outrageous, it's illegal, it's immoral, it shouldn't be happening here. And he, in his words, he said, there's going to be a protest because I'm going to lead it. This was a Jewish man in that community. So that's the truth of what happened here. But maybe the most outrageous and dishonest coverage came from where else? CNN, where they had Van Jones join to call it a pogrom, as you rightly said, Saagar. Just listen to this insanity in the way that he portrays this.
If you don't like what's happening in Gaza, it's your right to protest. That's not a problem. But you protest a policy. You don't protest a people. When you protest a policy, you go to City Hall and you protest. You go to the Israeli consulate peacefully, you protest. Maybe you go to your elected representative, you protest. You don't bum rush a Jewish neighborhood and run up on a synagogue. That's not protesting a policy, that's protesting a people. And that is across any line in America, and it has to be called out. You cannot protest a people. That is not a protest, that's a pogrom, and that has to stop.
Let's talk about the policy. Let's talk about how the Biden administration, how the president's handling the policy, Van. How do you see it? Where does he need to improve on this?
Well, listen, I think that the president is in a tough position because the base of the party is very concerned about these images that we keep seeing from Gaza, and he wants to take a strong stand on behalf of human rights for everybody. That's Joe Biden. At the same time, I think it's a little bit naive for some people to think that if Israel would suddenly just stop doing what it's doing, that rainbows and bunnies and sunshine would break out over the Middle East and it would all be fine. The hostages have to be returned. If you can call for a ceasefire, call for a ceasefire on both sides. Hamas is still firing its rockets. They still have hostages kidnapped. So this is a complex issue, but here's what's not complicated. Politics can be complicated. Geopolitics can be really complicated. How you treat your neighbors, how you treat people in your community is not complicated. You don't run up, I haven't seen any Jewish people running up on mosques with Israeli flags. If they did that, I'd be denouncing that too. There are certain things you don't do. It is a red line. If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant, that's not a protest. That's a pogrom.
Oh my God. So if you listen to that whole segment, you would never know why the protesters were there. It's not just because they hate Jews and they wanted to protest in a Jewish neighborhood outside of a synagogue. It's so dishonest. He says you protested policy, not a people. They literally were protesting a policy. That's why they were there. But you are too dumb or too much of a liar to actually inform your audience about what was going on. And like I was saying, listen, if you've got an issue, you don't think that that's acceptable, okay. Lay that out. But give people the facts of why they were actually there. They weren't just quote unquote bum rushing a Jewish neighborhood and running up on a synagogue. Disgusting. Disgusting. Such liars.
As long
unbelievable.
As they put out the context, then you can say whatever you want. But it's like when you put it out of the context, that's what really pisses me off. And why is it that me as a news professional has to dig deep just to figure out the most basics? And at the same time, I'm like, yeah, that's why I even have a job, right? Like in a perfect world, you don't even need to exist. But this is exactly what the issue is. So regardless of where you are, like, you know, some of the rhetoric out here, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna send in the National Guard? I'm like, yo, this is nuts. You're allowing foreign sales to happen in houses of worship. I mean, first of all, shouldn't you have your tax status pulled if you're gonna be doing stuff like that? I don't think that should be allowed in American soil. Maybe just me. I don't think you should be having foreign sales going down in houses of worship and stuff like this, which are official events. So anyways, I think
and closed out, but too exclusionary too.
No, literally.
If you're not Jewish, you can't go in and buy that real estate.
Right.
I mean, that's not how we do things in America.
Right.
It's, you know, since the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, you have to allow people of all backgrounds, races, genders, etc., to be able to. So you're having this exclusionary event that is counter to international law, and you're saying people are not allowed to protest that. And the only reason that they possibly could have been protesting that is because of anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.